All right. Welcome back to the Believe You Are a Good Mom podcast. I have a good mom with us today. This is very exciting because her name is Emily. Who doesn't love women whose name is Emily, right? And Emily keeps telling me that I look like her sister too. So I guess if your sister is my doppelganger, then that makes us sisters. And
I'll
okay.
make sure she listens to this so she can hear herself speak.
Okay, good. Yep. Shout out to Emily's sister, who I don't know her name.
Christina.
There you go, Christina. Here's your shout out. Okay, so Emily Hamblin is here. She is a parenting coach and she put together an amazing summit that's about to come out. And so I will let her tell you all about that. But first, can you kind of just introduce yourself?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on the show, Emily. Always fun to connect with someone with an amazing name and another amazing mom. So, but yeah, as you said, my name's Emily Hamblin. I am a mom coach through Enlightening Motherhood, and I'm the main podcast host over there. I do have an amazing co-host also, Ashley. But our goal is to empower moms whose children have rather intense emotions to be able to more effectively and calmly and confidently handle the challenges that come along with that in parenting. And a little bit of background for me, formerly I had 27 foster children. I have 4 biological kids. I'm a certified teacher. I've worked with more than 1,000 kids all around the globe, from working in daycares during my summers off in college. I started babysitting at age 10. Like, I've just worked so much with so many different children. And like, one common theme among all of the children is that they're all really wonderful people and none of them are bad. Like, just like there's no bad mom, right?
Yeah.
There's no bad kids, just a lot of kids that maybe have different challenges than others. And for me, with my own biological children, I didn't know that they were neurodiverse. I didn't know for many years that they have ADHD and that they have autism and probably some more stuff going on that we don't know about just yet. And I just knew that they were 3, 4, 5, 9, and they were still melting down. And it was much worse than a toddler fit. And it was really intense sometimes. And I had this also with my foster children. Sometimes the explosions would be so intense and so extreme and aggressive, or the implosions where they would just shut off. Like, I shared on my podcast this week about a time when I had a foster child that one night I just said, okay, let's go do the dishes after dinner, which we did every single night. And that child just ran to their room and fell into a deep sleep. They just imploded so heavily because it triggered some things from, long story there, but just dealing with these really intense emotions and all of the behaviors that it brought out was really hard for me for a long time. And I've learned so many different tools to help me with it that now I'm turning around and I'm trying to help other mothers. And I know one thing was I just felt so alone for so long, especially working with like so many kids. And you know how it is. We think that everyone else has it put together and that we're the only hot mess around. Mm-hmm. And I had some of that. But then when I would open up to friends and I'd find that safe space and I'd say, okay, so what do you do like when your child is screaming at you? And they're like, oh no, we don't let that happen around here. I'm like, okay, so what do you do to stop it? Or like, I tell them, you stop screaming. And I said, okay, so when they continue to scream, like, what do you do then? And they would look at me and be like, well, that doesn't happen. They always listen to me. Wow. Or they know I mean business or things like that. And I would be like, okay, so let's say I scream at them back and then they start to like throw things and thrash and like hit their head on the wall. What do you do then? And they just would look at me with these terrified eyes like, we don't have that around here. Yeah. And that's when I felt really alone, like, oh man, maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe my kids are messed up. And now I realize none of that's true, right? None of that's true. I wasn't doing it wrong. I'm not doing it wrong. My kids aren't messed up. They're not broken. I'm not horrible. They're just different. Yeah. And they need a different approach. And I needed to learn some things for me. And I've now developed like a 4-step process that I walk clients through and I walk moms through to help them become more confident, to ditch that mom guilt, to ditch that stress, and to meet their kids where they're at and help their children build up the skills that they currently don't have to better handle those situations that lead to meltdowns, and to build up the skills for mom to better handle the meltdowns when they still come, because our kids are still human, just like we are.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Is
was
so,
probably more than you wanted.
no, that was perfect. So what I find so interesting about your story is that you were a teacher. So you taught thousands of kids, and then you're a foster mom to how many? 27 kids,
Yeah.
right? And so you've dealt with children, you know about children, and you know about emotions, and you know about, but once they're your own, something is different. Like literally your DNA is in them. Your generational traumas have been passed on to them, and they obviously are their own, person, and they have
Yeah.
their own brains and their own everything, is functioning in their own bodies, but they came out of your DNA mixed with your husband's DNA. And it's like there is literally like biologically something different there. And it's like you can be in the grocery store and other kids are having a meltdown and it doesn't matter, but if your kid is having a meltdown, how it triggers you.
Yeah.
And I really think there's something to that, besides just, you're thinking something different when your kids are melting down versus somebody else's, like biologically, physiologically. Just the more I learn about, trauma and things like that, it's just really fascinating. So, and then definitely that alone piece is the real deal. So it's like,
Yeah.
everybody is having a different experience. And even though we all are moms and we all have kids, maybe even the same age or whatever, like every child is so different and every mom is so different. We're having our own experience. We want to be like, we need to be able to share with someone to pop that shame bubble,
Yeah.
But then if you get those stares like, whoa, what is going on in your house? Then you're like, whoop, back into the shame bubble. Like, never mind, there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with my kids,
Yeah.
And that's not true. We just have to find the right tribe to share with, that like get it, So yeah, a lot of stuff there. Okay. So I just want to be clear. Your podcast is called Enlightening Motherhood, right?
Yes.
So if anybody wants to go check that out. And then tell us about the summit you just put together.
Oh my goodness. I am just so excited for this, Emily. We have, I'm seeing 28 plus experts. It looks like we have 30 experts plus me. So 31 in total of amazing people like you that are all over the board. We have certified life coaches. We have occupational therapists. We have neurodiversity advocates. We have people talking about ADHD, anxiety, OCD, autism. We have well, there were a few more in there, lots of early childhood and later childhood. We have someone talking that is a speech language pathologist talking about screen time use. And so we're tying up this huge, really comprehensive container full of one goal to help everyone that attends to raise a more emotionally healthy family. And that doesn't mean that children that are 100% compliant all of the time and that you'll never have challenges again in your life, but we're hoping to maybe give you more tools to help your children with their emotions and to help you with your emotions to, better handle them when they come up in a way that is a bit healthier and that feels better and that will hopefully help you out in your life.
Yeah, that is so good. So needed. I feel like emotional education is new in this generation.
Yes.
And so needed, right? And I don't know why children are different now than they were, and parenting needs to be different, and brains are different, and there's like legit reasons, like our diets have changed and our sleep habits have changed, and of course screens have their part in
COVID messed everything up.
Changing, retry our brains, right? Yeah, all the reasons. And so it's just really, really, really good time for this. So I'm really excited.
We're so excited to have you in it. Your interview, I hope everyone comes and listens to it. It's so good. I just see it helping out a lot of people. So we're thrilled to have you there.
Yeah. Okay. So emotional, healthy emotions, right? Because I feel like the message that we might have received growing up was like, well, I don't know, there's different ones, but there's like the goal is for your kids to be happy, for one thing, right? So if your kids aren't happy, then you're failing as a mom. I think
unless it's a relative to happy, if they're excited or
sure, some high vibration,
yeah,
quote unquote good emotion, right? Like all the good emotions are good.
Scared or angry or frustrated, none of that was okay.
Yeah. And all of that needs to like be handled in your room by yourself, because we don't know how to handle it. And we still don't know how if we don't learn how. So we don't just know these things by you know, birthing a child or adopting a child or fostering a child or like having children in our space, all of a sudden we don't know how to handle our emotions. We still want them to handle their emotions so that we don't have to deal with our emotions, right? And so it's just so good. So do you give sneak peeks at this 4-step process that you mentioned? Or is this like
Sure. Well, I'm probably going to be giving a masterclass and going deep into that.
way fun.
But yeah, I will say I used, especially coming into parenting from a teacher perspective, and I was like rocking out the teacher world. I got amazing evaluations when I did college and they evaluated me. And when I did early childhood, parents would like beg for me to continue with their children. Like I was rocking out this teacher thing. And so I was really excited to transfer it all into parenting, right? And I had tons of tools for handling behavior and for classroom management. And I really did legitimately care about the children a lot. And I know that that mattered way more than the tools. So I had this like love for children in general. And when it's your own child, you know, of course, it like intensifies. So I'm loving them fiercely and I have all of these tools. And so for me, the early years were just fine. Like they're a baby and they're a toddler. And then they start talking. And then I started expecting them to behave the way that we expect them to behave, right? When I say things like, okay, it's time to get your shoes on to go, that they're not going to scream at me and get down on the ground and start to, what's the word? Flail around,
yeah.
Flail around because they don't want to put their shoes on to go. It's always the shoes in my house. We still struggle with shoes.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
I take a bag of shoes everywhere we go. I'm like, just get in the car. Maybe we'll get the shoes on once we get there.
We do that. Right now it's summer in Arizona, so they'll burn their feet.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, but that's a good idea to just throw in a bag of flip-flops or something. But in any case, yeah, I had all of these tools and then I kept trying to learn more parenting tools. Okay, so I want to get my kid to stop melting down. I want to get them to put their shoes on. I want to get them to stop screaming at me. I want to get them to do all these things. And like, I wouldn't say that that's bad. Like I wasn't doing anything wrong. I wasn't beating my kids. I wasn't locking them in the closet without food, anything like that we would say was abusive at all. But it wasn't very effective because the meltdowns were getting worse. My relationship with my child was getting worse. My stress level was so high. My self-esteem as a mom was really low. The mom guilt and shame that you talk a lot about were just really ultra high, and it wasn't working. And so what I realized, the very first step to parenting any child, and especially a kid with these intense emotions, is that you need to learn to manage your own emotions independent of whatever your child does, right? And so that mindset piece, and also understanding like your nervous system and all of your 8 senses and everything, like we spend a lot of time going into ourselves. Okay, so my child is on the floor screaming. They're not putting their shoes on and we're going to be late for this doctor appointment. I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling angry. Why? Why am I feeling these things? Is it helping the situation? If not, what do I need to do to change the way I'm feeling so that I can be much more effective? Because I can't work on my child's emotions when I've got my own emotional things going on, much like you said, right? I kept wanting my child to change their behavior so that I would feel better. But I needed to feel better before I even worked on helping them.
Yeah.
So that was the biggest thing. And that one was hard because I also said, growing up, I grew up in a home that with parents that I really do believe were doing their best, but they yelled a lot. And it was just the default. And I always said, I'm not going to yell at my kids. And when I was babysitting, teaching, daycare, like all of the things, I rarely raised my voice. And if I did, it was like there were boxes stacked up in the corner of the room and one of the kids was pulling the bottom box and this top box was about to fall on 6 different kids. And so that was me like, stop it. And everyone turned and looked and they're freaking out. Oh my goodness, Miss Emily just yelled. Like she never yells at us and she just yelled. And then no one would talk for the next 20 minutes because they were in fight or flight and they were so scared because I never yelled at them. Like that's how it was in like teacher mode. But in mom mode, it was like I was yelling left and right and I didn't want to. It seemed like it was just happening, right? And I would go, okay, maybe this is just a willpower thing. Okay, I'm not going to yell and I'm not going to yell. And then I would just yell. So again, it took a lot of the deep work. Like, why was I yelling in the first place? What's going on here? How can I replace it? it was not an overnight thing. And that's something else I'd like to help moms with, because we talk about managing our own emotions in our culture, and some people are like, yeah, that's kind of weird. But when we say, let's stop yelling at our kids, they're like, okay, yeah, maybe I can be on board with that.
Right.
So anyways, I don't know how much of that answered your question. I also have ADHD, so I forgot the original.
The original question was about the 4-step process.
Okay, so thank
Probably
you.
in there
I'm so
somewhere.
sorry.
That's
So
okay.
that's the first step right there, though, is the biggest one. It takes a lot of deep digging, especially when you're around really intense emotions, and you still need to get to that doctor's appointment. It's not like you can, well, you can just sit there and say, well, we're going to miss the doctor's appointment, but I usually don't want that as an option.
Yeah.
And so, okay, I don't want to scream at my kid. I don't want to miss a doctor's appointment, but just not screaming isn't going to be enough right now. So I manage my emotion. I need to figure out, why is my kid screaming too? Like, why doesn't he want to put those shoes on? And, again, for years I would think, oh, this child is just, they're just being disrespectful, or they just won't listen to me, or they're being naughty. I wouldn't have said the child was bad, but I would say, like, oh, they're just trying to be bad, or they're trying to push my buttons. And now I realize, actually, there's probably something else going on. So I have, it's going to end up being a paid thing, but for now it's still free. I have a Why Is My Child Melting Down cheat sheet, and it's totally free. And this took me a lot of time to develop, where I've broken it down into 6 different possible areas that are probably causing that meltdown. Then each area has a ton of examples, like sensory is one thing that I hadn't considered. Maybe my child is overstimulated or understimulated. And we break it down into the different 8 senses, and what does that mean to be over or understimulated, and what can we do about it? So I do have one kid now, for example, let's say it was time to go and he's screaming and refusing to put his shoes on. I know to look at him and read his body, because I've learned how, and I've learned a lot of different methods to go, okay, what's going on? What's his body telling me? Okay, from the way he's moving, everything that I've learned about him, it looks to me like he's actually overstimulated with his auditory sensoring and understimulated with his vestibular. So I might bring him to me and hum a little song in his head, or give him some headphones to block out that sound, hug him tight to give him some proprioceptive input, and then rock him side to side to give him vestibular input. And that will often calm him down within 1 to 2 minutes. Just this particular child. And it took me a while to figure that out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But now that I have that, I know, okay. So me sitting there saying, just get your shoes on. You're making a bad choice. Okay, if you don't put your shoes on right now, then you're not going to have ice cream for dessert, which in his mind is like, what does ice cream have to do with shoes, Mom?
Exactly. Yeah.
And all of the tactics that we had growing up for us. And I could scare him to put them on, like, get your shoes on or else. And then it's like, boom, now he's in fight or flight. So he's going to comply, but it's not in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So figuring out that root cause is so important. And then I can find tools that match me, match my child, and match the moment. So my toolbox is huge now, but missing those first 2 steps of, like, managing myself, understanding that root cause, those were some of the biggest things I was missing in my own parenting.
Yeah.
But I do delve into them obviously a lot deeper, but that's kind of the gist of.
Yeah, for sure. So that's what I found too, is that, like, I'm inundating myself with tools, and just overwhelming myself with, because I interpreted them all as rules, not tools.
Yes.
So when you have that many rules and you can't follow any of them, then you're a failure at all at following the rules. And as a rule follower, historically, then that I made that mean stuff about me personally, right?
Yeah.
As we do, as we make it mean that we're a terrible mom, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not a terrible mom. I'm a good mom that has too many rules that I can't follow, right? That don't work for me and for my kids, because there's tools, not rules, right? And so there's certain tools that work for certain situations and that don't for others. Like when I'm trying to hammer a nail into the wall and I can't find the hammer, so I'm like, I'll just use this stapler. Like, it's not as effective, right? I'm like, let me just find something hard, and it's just not a hammer. It does not do the job right. And so figuring out which tool works in which situation, instead of like, what was it that I saw on Instagram the other day that's supposed to be the fix all for everything? Like, it just doesn't work that way, right? And so so same. It was like I had tons of tools, but until I figured out self-regulation, the tools are out the window because your nervous system is activated. You have no access to your higher functioning list of rules in your head somewhere and all the knowledge that you've like dumped into your brain. There's no access to that when you're, lid is flipped, and so learning how to calm our own nervous system and then getting curious about what's going on with the child's nervous system and learning how to calm it also is the secret sauce. And then all the tools are useful once everybody's regulated.
Yeah.
But
and we make it sound so easy like that, but let's just
not.
be honest. It does take a lot of work, and that's
and literally learning how to calm your nervous system like is a process. Like you said, it takes a really long time. So even if you learn about it, it's a day by day reprogramming your brain and your body, and that's a lifelong pursuit. So in the meantime, it's all about grace and compassion for ourselves and for our kids and for the neighbors and for everyone around us, that we're all doing the best we can. And that we are a good mom, right? Doing the best we can.
And building up that confidence. I love that you brought up the neighbors, because understanding that when your neighbors say, oh, your kid just needs a good swat on the bum and then they'll be fine, like, to understand that they are actually meaning their best. Like, they are trying to help probably, and they do think that their advice is good, and to just recognize like, okay, I appreciate your input and I'm not going to follow it, and it's okay. Or even I love that you brought up the Instagram thing. We were chatting before hitting record that there's so much contradictory parenting advice.
Yeah.
And even like some of the like top parenting experts, some might say never ever leave your child alone when they're having a meltdown or experiencing intense emotions. And I can tell you that me as a kid, I wanted to be left alone.
Yeah.
And I've even had experts say, like, even if they say, leave me alone, go away, you're going to say, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. And for me, I would have been like, seriously, get the heck out of my room. Like, go. What do I have to do to get rid of you? I want to be alone right now. Like, and so for me, I just let my kids choose. Do you want me to stay with you? Do you want me to go? Leave me alone. And maybe inside they're hoping that I stay. And maybe they're going to have to learn that if they want me to stay, they're going to have to say, I want you to stay.
Yeah.
Right. And later when they're calm, I can talk to them and say, so you asked me to leave you alone. Did you really want me to? I don't know. Okay. Well, if you ever change your mind, you can say, come back or come here, and I'll be right outside your door. But I want to respect what you prefer in that moment. Yeah. I mean, as much as possible. If they're saying, give me the whole bag of chocolate chips for breakfast, like, I'm
right.
That's going to be different. I'll probably still be really compassionate and on their side, like, oh man, you really want that whole bag of chocolate chips for breakfast. But
so do I, buddy. So do I.
We're just not going to do it. And I'm here for you and I love you.
Yeah. Yeah. So it really, really, really is an exercise in figuring out individuals, ourself, everything that we've been through, our kids, everything they've been through in their young lives already, and just case by case, and so as we try, because our brain's just really like black and white, so it's like an equations, if he does this and I do this, then we'll have this happy ending. And it just isn't that cut or dry, right? It's an art, not a science, parenting. So
and then our kids grow. Like I was telling you, mine's about to be my oldest is almost 13. So we're about to enter all the teenage things, and his brain's going to start changing all over again, and his body and his hormones. And so I know I'm going to need to learn new things. So just keeping that growth mindset.
Yeah, exactly. Then as soon as we feel like we got it figured out, then it changes. Hooray. So yeah, good times. And I can really see that in like having lots of kids. It's like I forgot that we phased out of something until the next one phases in, and I'm like, oh, here we go again with this thing. And you would think it'd be like, oh yeah, I have experience with this. I know. No, it's like, ooh, I'd never figured this out. They just phased out of it, and now I've got it. Yeah, it's good times. So tell everybody again where they can find you.
Well, if they want to come over and listen to my podcast, I'd love to have them. Enlightening Motherhood And they can find me Instagram, Facebook, and my website, all under the same name, Enlightening Motherhood and enlighteningmotherhood.com.
I love that so much because it just feels enlightening. It's like light. It feels like inspiration. It just feels good,
That's
and
my goal, because a lot of the moms I work with feel dark and heavy. So we're trying to
exactly.
lighten their load and bring some light into their life.
So good. I love that. Okay. Well, thank you so much for being here. We'll have all the details on the summit so that everybody can sign up and learn from
Awesome.
all the experts, which I love how you even just said, even the experts have different
Yeah, you'll
expertise.
probably see that in the summit. I bet
Yeah.
you'll listen to one interview and then listen to another and go, wait, they're not saying the same thing. And
I
that's
love it.
kind of the point,
I mean,
right?
I hated it a few years ago, but now I totally embrace it. I really hated it. Like I would read a parenting book and be like, this isn't working. So I'd call my sister who had 6 kids already, and
Mhm.
she would just keep telling me to rip that book up, like throw that book away. And I'm like, and then I'd call her back and she's like, are you reading the same book? I'm like, but I have to figure that, and it's just like, when we look to outside sources for the answers, we just get confused. Like we got to figure out how to tap in, and there still is a place for the outside sources. So I love to I'm a consumeraholic as much as anybody. Like I love listening to the
Mhm.
podcasts and all the summits and all the things, but then we really have to like develop our own filter of like what's going to work for us and for our kids. And it's really helpful to have lots of perspectives to choose from instead of like all those turning into rules. It's just
Yeah,
tools in our
like a
toolbox.
really awesome buffet. And if you
Yes.
don't like the shrimp, don't pick the shrimp up.
Yep. Just
Yeah.
get a huge plate of bacon. That's what we do at buffets. All right. Well, awesome. Thanks so much for being here, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me.
And we will talk to everyone next time. Bye.